Welcome to the MLB Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, taking a look at tonight's 14-game MLB slate, breaking down where to look for some offense. If you are looking for pitching news and info there, be sure to check out the Pitcher Nail Down. We touch on all of our favorite GPP cash game targets, guys we're staying away from, and you can kind of pick up on guys we're staying away from this podcast right here, looking at some offense. Jumping right into things, we're looking at 7:05. First game of the night, White Sox and Orioles, over-under of 8. You have Mike Wright, Carlos Rodon on the hill, and two definite offenses that can thrive in this ballpark. Doesn't have quite the high total that it did yesterday, but still definitely very much in play. You're looking at those White Sox bats, more so on FanDuel at their price tag. I think Jose Abreu and Todd Frazier kind of stand out to me as far as the price difference goes from DraftKings to FanDuel. Both below, Abreu is below 3,500. I know Frazier's right around that mark as well, but if you look over on DraftKings, both are 4,800. So that's something that's a little bit interesting. Adam Eaton as well. Obviously, the matchup is pretty favorable going up against Mike Wright. Camden Yards is pretty hitter friendly as well, up in the top 5 for me. So you can look at those White Sox bats. I think they're an interesting GPP stack. I also think they're safe enough for one-offs and cash games. I think Abreu is a great play tonight. I just think, one, is his ownership is going to be a little bit lower. You're looking at Mike Wright. I mean, he struggled with a long ball. Doesn't have a tremendous track record, but 341 WOBA allowed to right-handers. With a 1.34 home runs per 9. So I think you're getting a pretty good steal on Abreu tonight on FanDuel. DraftKings, the price tag's pretty high for a guy who's been struggling a little bit to start the season. So you can look at 1 through 5 there. I think they're an interesting play, an interesting stack tonight. On the other side, obviously you have a couple right-handers leading things off. Joey Rickard, Manny Machado, Adam Jones, who are all pretty cheap. They're actually cheaper options in comparison to the White Sox side and have a slightly higher run total. Carlos Rodon's been great this season. If you do look at the larger sample size, obviously you can say he's struggled with righties, keeping the ball in the park. 351 WOBA allowed. I still think the Orioles are great targets. I won't be leaning on them too heavily in cash games. But GPPs, obviously, they are very much in play. Machado, very hard to get away from at 4,200. On DraftKings there, who does have that shortstop eligibility, so that is something that you like as well. Obviously, Mark Trumbo, who just is absolutely annihilating lefties. I believe 5 of his 6 home runs now this season are against southpaws. And also you can look at Matt Wieters, who had the day off, very cheap punt catcher option, hitting 6th. There in Camden Yards has hit lefties a little bit better than right-handers in his career. So Wieters an interesting value option. So, there is still, despite the lower total, it's still pretty friendly. Over under 8, you might see that even shoot up throughout the day. But I'm all over that game as far as offense goes. Next one here, you got Indians and Phillies in Citizens Bank Park. Over under 7.5. Cleveland, big favorites here. You're obviously looking at Kluber as being arguably the top option on tonight's slate. They'll be scoring off against Adam Morgan. And you like these Cleveland bats here tonight, going up against Adam Morgan. A lot of switch hitters, a lot of right-handed bats that they have in the lineup now. It's not so heavily left-handed, which is great because since 2014, Adam Morgan's allowed a 351 WOBA, allowed 1.67 home runs per 9. He's been a guy, if you've been around DFS, you've picked on him before, and you're definitely looking to do so again tonight. You obviously like Mike Napoli as a value. First baseman with some pop. Yan Gomes, Marlon Byrd as well kind of stand out to me as those cheap GPP options. I don't mind Gomes in cash. Byrd as well, I think he's a decent value outfielder option. Francisco Lindor is a guy who turns around and hits from the right side with lefties on the hill. Great play for me hitting 3rd. And those bats, I mean, you're looking at Brantley, Kipnis, they're not bad against lefties and lefty-lefty matchups, so I think a Cleveland stack is definitely in play. But you're leaning more towards the right-handed bats with Morgan really struggling against righties in his career. So definitely looking there. As far as the Philly side of things go, no thank you. I will not be picking on Corey Kluber. Coming off an electric start against Detroit, he's going to be my lead cash game play tonight. So I think you're looking at Kluber to do some damage, and Philly's not so much. Next one, you got 7:05 Reds and Pirates. Dan Straley versus Juan Nicasio. Over under 7.5. Pittsburgh decent favorites here. Obviously, they're heading out back to PNC, so this Pirates offense is going to be dampered just a little bit. They're not really on my radar at their prices. You're looking at McCutchen still very pricey, especially after that 3 home run performance he had. Starling Marte as well. Guys I don't mind still are Francisco Cervelli, Gregory Polanco more so on FanDuel. That price tag's way too high for Polanco on DraftKings at 4,800. Yeah, as I mentioned, Jaso Cervelli, kind of the guys that catch my eye just at their price tags. But on a 14-game slate, I'm not really looking at this game for offense. I think you can kind of strand away and go other options tonight. Next one, you got 7-10 Masahiro Tanaka versus Henry Owens, the lefty coming up and making his 2016 debut. We've seen him a few times. He's been up and down in the majors. Big over-under here of 8.5, so even with Tanaka on the hill, they're still expecting some decent runs. And the way the Sox have been swinging the bat, I definitely don't think Tanaka's a safe play tonight. And I think even with his talents, you still should look at the Red Sox and GPPs, especially kind of their depreciated price tags on DraftKings. Pedroia slipping back under 4K, Bogart's under 4K, Ortiz just 4,200. One that stands out to me who's been kind of hitting the ball well lately is Hanley Ramirez at 3,600. But the one thing where Tanaka has been, a little bit up and down with, lefties have had some success against him at times. That is something to keep an eye on. So 32% hard ball rate off of him since 2014. You can definitely look at him there. So I think guys like Ortiz hitting from the left side, Travis Shaw still in play for me in tournaments. I think you can still get some decent value, and obviously they have that pop. As far as the other side of things go, I think you can definitely look at those Yankees bats here going up against Owens. Hasn't been particularly strong in the majors. Hasn't been bad either, but still allowing a 320 WOBA to right-handers since 2014. So not incredibly intimidating. Guys who turn around and hit from the right side, guys like Mark Teixeira, Beltran, Alex Rodriguez, all GPPs. I think this game is where I'm going to be finding most of my GPP swerves from games that are a little bit safer as far as offense goes. So you can definitely do that there. Next game I am looking at, you got the Giants and Mets, over under 7, Jake Peavy versus Steven Matz. Matt's not a big fan of him tonight, even though he's one of the quality pitchers on the hill. But you're also looking at a Giants team that doesn't strike out a ton. Guys like Buster Posey, Hunter Pence, Matt Duffy might be in play for me here, just because they're so cheap. I think they are a cheap stack. We've seen Matt's blow up already this season. We've also seen him pitch well. And I think Posey, obviously, and Pence have a terrific track record against left-handed pitching. Citi Field, yes, it's not the best hitter's park, but it also is better than AT&T. So you can definitely look their way. Posey is still a safe cash game guy for me at 3,600. It's hard to get away from that. FanDuel, they're a little bit more pricey, so I think that's one to consider. As far as the Mets side of things, you're looking at really attacking Peavy, if anything, in this game, allowing a 328 WOBA since 2014. The lefties, 1.31 home runs per 9. So overall, I think this left-handed Mets team is pretty strong. Granderson, Conforto, even Cespedes from the right side. I don't mind Duda and GPPs. Neil Walker, a safe cash game option. His price is very cheap on DraftKings at 3,900, as he's had a little power surge here to start the season. A little bit more pricier on FanDuel, so that's one slight difference to consider. Obviously, they're not expecting a ton of runs from this game, so I wouldn't go too heavy on it. I still think the Mets are an interesting stack against Peavy, who's clearly lost his way. So overall, I think it's a game you kind of treat with caution on a 14-game slate, but don't be afraid to target it as well. 7-10, you got Blue Jays and Rays here in Tropicana, just a 7.5 over-under. Aaron Sanchez versus Drew Smyly. Well, I mean, you look at what Smiley's done this season, he's absolutely been electric. Both of these Vegas run totals are under 4, so they're not expecting a ton of runs, and I'm not either. But I still think necessarily you can look at these Jays bats against any left-hander and feel confident in them, and especially now so at those price tags on DraftKings. Obviously, the dynamic pricing has priced them down with Smiley on the hill and the way he's been pitching lately. But outside of Donaldson, who's 4,900, Bautista 42, Encarnacion 39, Tulo 36, so they are very cheap. I don't mind that at all, but obviously Smiley, the way he's pitching, has been solid. He's been racking up huge strikeout rates, so I'll tread lightly, but I don't think they're necessarily an automatic fade for me. As far as the other side of things go, We saw Aaron Sanchez really struggle after 3 great starts to start the year. And once again, you're going to go back to the lefties against him possibly if, we thought maybe he had figured it out. Obviously, it was a very small sample size with those A's bats. Hit him well. And, you do want to go back to 2014 or whenever his last pitch here. 351 WOBA allowed to lefties, 1.65 home runs per 9. If that's in play here, you're obviously looking at Brad Miller as a punch shortstop, Corey Dickerson, 2 guys that catch my eye, Kevin Kiermaier, who unfortunately hits down the lineup, but he has some pop. He would be a multiple lineup type guy if you're looking for GPP upside. He's hit the ball hard to start the season. So overall, I'm not expecting a ton of runs from this one. I think you can kind of move on. This next one here, 805 Angels and Rangers, you're looking at 2 weaker arms, although Hector Santiago's having his usual, stretch here before eventually he blows up, depending on when that happens or not. But over-under of 9, Colby Lewis on the hill. Obviously, Lewis not strong in any sorts against both sides, allowing a 328 WOBA to right-handers since 2014 with a 1.48 home runs per 9. Lefties, 352 WOBA allowed, 1.12 home runs per 9. So you can look at this Angels team here. I know they got some great value. Obviously, Trout's expensive, but Cole Calhoun, Albert Pujols, reasonably cheap. If you want some cheap plays like Rafael Ortega, Escobar hitting up top in the lineup, it's not bad options. This Angels offense hasn't been great to start the season. Vegas does have them as one of the higher projected scoring teams on the slate, so you can definitely lean their way. I won't be getting a ton of exposure to them tonight in cash games just because I feel like there are more consistent options on the board, but I definitely don't think they're a bad option in GPPs. Obviously, Mike Trout comes out as one of the top players on the slate. Cole Calhoun, nice record against Colby Lewis as well for BVP purposes, but it's just back because Colby Lewis has been awful against left-handers in his career. And obviously, getting out of Angel Stadium and into the Arlington Ballpark there, this is going to help out those bats. So as far as the other side of things go, you can look at guys like Ian Desmond and GPPs. Adrian Beltre, always a safe cash game guy at the hot corner, but he is priced around some other options that are pretty intriguing, especially with Manny Machado being cheaper there on DraftKings. But overall, Beltre is a guy who's hit lefties well. Santiago, incredibly home run prone. In his time, 1.60 home runs per 9 to right-handed bats since 2014, so that's huge. You can look at those right-handed guys, although Texas is a little bit heavily left-handed. Santiago not quite as tough on, is a little bit tougher on lefties. So I'm not jumping all on board on the Texas team tonight as far as matching their end of the bargain for the total there. So next one, you got 8-10 Marlins and Brewers. I really like this game for offense. Over under of 9. It's in Miller Park, very friendly hitters field. Indoors, you're not getting the cool weather. And so you're looking at a lefty on the hill in Miami, Milwaukee, throwing up Zach Davies. If you didn't hear already, D. Gordon suspended 80 games due to PED use because obviously his 120 pounds, he needed that to get there to that weight. But overall, you're going to see Derek Dietrich come in and step in and play a bigger role. Martin Prado might shift around. So look for them to jump up into the top of the order. I'm not quite sure what this Marlins lineup is going to do, but it's definitely going to open up some value with Zach Davies on the hill. I'm expecting Prado and Dietrich to be those guys. And obviously Christian Yelich, Giancarlo Stanton being favorable plays. Maybe Marcell Ozuna sneaks up. I know he's more so in the top of the lineup when lefties are on board. But overall, I love this Marlins team. 1 through 6, they're very much in play for me. And depending on where the value lands, they're going to be cash game and GPPs format style for me tonight. As far as the Milwaukee side of things, obviously the lefty goes there. Adam Conley, very much in play tonight in tournaments, but I think you're looking at him. He's struggled with home runs at times, 1.11 home runs per 9 to right-handers, 312 WOBA. So he does miss some bats, but I think guys like Ryan Braun, Domingo Santana at the top of the order, still Jonathan Lucroy, Chris Carter, kind of boomer bust plays outside of Ryan Braun. So I think you can look at them for GPPs. If you're not having any Conley shares, of course, because I think I will, as the day goes on, kind of quietly increase my shares just because he's so cheap, and this Marlins or this Brewers team isn't too great, but they do have some right-handed bats that could give some trouble. So there is some risk on both sides. Next one, you got Tigers and Twins. Hughes and Fulmer going at it, over under of 9. Looking at this Tiger side, it's obviously not in a great field, but obviously target Target Field's not a bad place for hitters. It's not a great one either. You can look at those bats who are still very cheap. All below 4,500 on DraftKings, one through, in fact, the entire Tigers lineup is under 4,500, so it's interesting there. You can get a cheap stack with the Tigers going up against Hughes, who's been incredibly home run prone. He's had those reverse splits, 336 WOBA allowed to right-handers since 2014, with a 1.26 home runs per 9. So overall, I think you can look at the Tigers and feel pretty comfortable with it. Victor Martinez, one of my favorite options on tonight's slate on FanDuel, just because he's catcher eligible in a great spot, as well as has been coming off a hot series, so I do like him there. As far as the Twins side of things, obviously all GPP plays, they're boom or bust, guys like Dozier. One guy that catches my eye is Danny Santana leading off again. I believe it was 2 years ago where he had some significant DFS value. I believe he got up into the 4Ks on FanDuel and was hitting the ball well. So this guy does have potential. He does have some speed, so he can do a bit of things there. And of course, at his price tag, he's not going to have to do much to reach value, and he's kind of more so there for value purposes than anything. But overall, I think he's a fine play tonight. Brian Dozier, GPP only. Miguel Sano, GPP only. Mauer, fine cash game guy for Ronald Kluber, but I think there's better power options around that price tag. Overall, this Twins team there's not a lot to like, but they are in a good spot tonight. So tread lightly, but also, you can look at them as a stack if you want. 8:15, you got Nationals and Cardinals. Steven Strasburg versus Mike Leake. Over under of 7.5. Not a big fan of either of these teams. Daniel Murphy and Bryce Harper, the only ones that should stand out to you, of course, going up against Leake, who hasn't been great against lefties. He's allowed a 332 WOBA since 2014, doesn't miss a ton of bats. So guys like Daniel Murphy and Bryce Harper are the only ones that really pop out for me in this game. Obviously not looking to really attack Strasburg. But Harper, 5,200, still can't complain on DraftKings. Daniel Murphy, still a great option at a cheaper price tag. You can definitely look there for those guys and finding some bats. But overall, those are the only two honorable mentions. 9:40, you got Rockies and Diamondbacks. Tyler Chatwood versus Robbie Ray, 8.5 over/under. Love this game. You're looking at Robbie Ray. He's allowed a 349 WOBA, two right-handers since 2014. Keeps the ball in the park, but a ridiculous hard ball rate. He allows it 37%. You're definitely looking at guys like Trevor Story, whose prices come down. Nolan Arenado, just a stupid price tag on DraftKings at 4,200. This guy's actually been crushing, and Chase Field hasn't been so much different than Coors this year. It's absolutely ridiculous that he's priced that low. But overall, him and Story still options. You can look at DJ LeMahieu as well. They all come pretty cheap, even those lefties. Carlos Gonzalez is below 3K. Gerardo Parra's 3,500. I know it's a lefty-on-lefty matchup, but still, Chase Field's very favorable for hitters. Vegas does have the Rockies right around 4. I still think Arenado is the top play on the board for me tonight, that price tag. The guy's hit on the road. He's fine outside of Coors. He's hit lefties well, so definitely looking at him. As far as the Diamondback side of things go, 1 through 6, very much in play for me. Chatwood hasn't had a ton of exposure to the big leagues, but so far, since 2014, 416 WOBA allowed to right-handers, 2.84 home runs per 9. Hasn't been great. Been a little bit tougher on lefties, but still a small sample size. Not a lot to like because there's still low strikeout rate, and the FIP's not too low either. But overall, I think you can look at really this Diamondbacks team and feel pretty comfortable. Obviously, Gene Segura, Goldschmidt, Peralta, all great cash or GPP plays. Peralta, cash game guy for me tonight. He's still fairly cheap. Goldschmidt didn't play in tournaments just because of that price tag is high. Jake Lamb has some pop from the left side. You can look at Castillo, who's got a nice power surge of late. I know you usually target him against lefties, but Chatwood hasn't been entirely great, and Chase Field's been pretty friendly. So overall, that's a great game to target right there. I definitely don't have a problem with that. Next game, you got Astros and Athletics. It's in O.co there, 7.5 over/under, so it's not too friendly for hitters, but you got a lefty on the hill there. Sean Manaea, who is making his debut in the majors, going up against the Astros, who have been struggling. He is a left-hander, so that does put the Houston bats in GPP territory for me. Obviously, Altuve, Springer, Correa, Tyler White, Evan Gattis all hit lefties extremely well. They should be sitting there 1 through 5. Obviously, the park factor is against them. Manaea is a highly touted prospect, so there's not much to go about. He's pitched well in the minors. I'm not getting too excited about these Houston bats, even with the lefty. I think there's a lot going up against him for me to really go choose them. As far as Mike Fiers go, not really picking on him as well. I just think he's been, better more times than not. Obviously, you're looking at a lot of those lefty bats against him, but Fiers has been pretty tough on left-handers, 23% strikeout rate since 2014, 2.79 WOBA allowed. So I'm kind of staying away from that A's team. I think there are better options on the board tonight. 10-10, you're looking at Chris Medlin taking on Felix Hernandez. Seattle big favorites there. Obviously not looking at many of the Royals bats against Felix Hernandez. Chris Medlin, I don't mind picking on with guys like Robbie Cano, Nelson Cruz, Kyle Seager, and GPPs. Cano's price is a little too expensive. I know he's coming off back-to-back big games, but it's tough for me to see that happening, although Medlin has been pretty average against lefties, 327 WOBA allowed since 2014. So overall, I think they're in decent spots. I think you can look at them. Obviously, a night game and Safeco's not the best place on a 14-game slate. So you can kind of tread away from that one from offense as well. Next one here, you got the 10-10 last game of the night. You have the Padres and Dodgers. Over under 7.5. You have Alex Wood and Cesar Vargas on the hill, right-hander. You can look at those Dodger bats. I think if you're targeting any offense in that late after 10 o'clock, it's going to be from the Dodgers side with those lefties. Even Justin Turner, they still come in pretty cheap. Although Puig and Gonzalez's price has shifted around a little bit tonight, kind of an odd pricing scale today. But I actually don't find it bad to look at some Padres bats and GPPs tonight. You're looking at Alex Wood, has not been great against right-handed pitching. Obviously hasn't looked that great last year. Guys like Will Myers, Matt Kemp, Derek Norris, you can look at them. Alexi Ramirez, Melvin Upton, some one-offs. Low run total for the Padres. I think it's going to obviously keep a lot of people off for sure, but I don't think they're actually a bad tournament way to go tonight with, especially a guy like Matt Kemp at that price tag. So you can definitely give him some consideration on tonight's slate. But overall, post 10 o'clock, you're not looking for a ton of offense outside of the Dodgers. So stick to those early games. Look to Texas, look into those Northeast games as well. So that's going to wrap it up with the slate breakdown. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.